Sydney has been battered by torrential rain and gale force winds in a downpour not seen in this city for over 20 years. Power has been cut and transport impacted from Katoomba to Kurnell, and the wild weather isn't over yet. Our reporters are standing by across the city and beyond. We begin our coverage with Alex Hart on a day that saw so much of Sydney up against a force of nature.
Windy and wild. Sydney hit hard, a tree crushing a taxi on Bridge Street, the driver stretched it away. One of dozens of rescues across the city and suburbs. The SES freeing a trapped driver at Milperra, police helping this man to safety at Chatswood.
People are clearly not hearing or adhering to those messages. Do not drive into swollen water areas across roadways.
This car had to be abandoned near Penrith.
Some poor gentleman drove through it in his wife's car.
You wouldn't walk into a bushfire, so why would you drive through floodwaters?
Others left on the side of the road at Wentworth Point, where waterfront took on a whole new meaning.
It's like price upgrade, you know, we're now like water view now.
The road in looked more like a river, the suburb swamped. Rescues on the water as well, a boatie on the Hawkesbury getting into trouble. The Windsor and Richmond bridges closed.
I've just driven an hour to get here because the bridge was open.
Yep.
And now, where am I meant to go?
A floating house breaking free from its mooring at Palm Beach. Rapids formed on the Parramatta River, overflowing onto walkways. A torrent surging through the ferry terminal. Worryingly, the rain is not letting up. It is intensifying, and as incredible as some of the scenes have been today, the worst could still be to come. The swollen Cooks River inundating parks at Marrickville, waterfalls flowing upside down at Cape Solander in Kurnell. Countless trees down, power lines too, sparks flying at Beverly Hills. Traffic lights out, gridlocked roads, drivers with no choice but to go slow. Two got bogged trying to get around fallen trees at Terry Hills. RFS crews working to clear blocked drains as the water kept rising. Trains delayed as water crossed the tracks, including at Bardwell Park and at Collaroy. This morning's king tide smashed the coast. The big swell and ferocious wind, all too familiar for those who lived through the catastrophic 2016 storm.
Yeah, it is close. Again, it gets a bit scary when it's like this.
There has been some work done here to protect these homes since the 2016 event, and conditions at the moment aren't quite as bad as they were back then, but understandably, residents along here right now are very nervous.
The roof next door is all coming off. It's been absolutely crazy. It's pretty terrifying, actually.
Big waves closing beaches. Not enough to put off these surfers at Balmoral and Vaucluse. The harbour like a washing machine. This video taken on the last Manly ferry before services were cancelled. Tens of thousands of homes are without power. The SES responding to thousands of calls for help. It didn't stop some from revelling in the rain, sporting fields becoming water parks, while others preferred to seek shelter and avoid the not so great outdoors.
And Alex Hart has moved to Lura for us tonight. Alex, there have been some major landslides.
Yes, Mark, what happened here happened at around about 2 o'clock this afternoon. You can see up behind me there some train lines that are suspended. That is where the land has given way, and just an enormous amount of mud and concrete and trees and debris has come swarming down here, crashing into the backyard of this property. The residents not home at this house, but the people in the house in front, they heard this. They said it sounded like a huge thunder crack as it came rumbling towards them. They thought their house could actually be washed away. As a result of what's happened up here, well, train services have been suspended between Lawson and Mount Victoria. Buses are replacing them tonight. Also, pretty significant delays for cars, for traffic heading through the mountains towards the city tonight. I should add, there have been some flood evacuations issued in the past hour or so for the North Richmond Lowlands area and also for the Narrabeen Lagoon area. Residents there told to be prepared to leave tonight as the flood waters rise. And if your power is out tonight, the advice is to be patient because the rain is still falling and it is quite unsafe for repair crews out there in the field. That power may not be restored until tomorrow, Mark.
OK, Alex Hart in the Blue Mountains for us. Thank you. Now, across the Hawkesbury-Nepean region, there are already signs of major flooding with serious warnings in place. Tom Saker is at Yarramundi for us. Tom, what's the threat to communities there?
Well, Mark, the Bureau of Meteorology has said that these floodwaters are the highest since 1992. So the threat levels to thousands of residents in the area is essentially very, very high. This is the Yarramundi Bridge, and as you can see, it's completely submerged. Yarramundi is more or less cut off. They're also without power, so they're facing a very tough situation. This is just one of 3 bridges in the area that is closed off, so motorists are advised to either stay off the road or heed the warnings. This is a notoriously high-risk flood area. In worst case scenarios, as many as 90,000 residents could be evacuated and 12,000 homes could be severely impacted by floodwaters. So the entire Nepean Hawkesbury Valley community is facing a very nervous wait over the next few hours, Mark.
They sure are. Any upside, Tom? Has much of this rain fallen over our catchments?
Well, yes, Mark, there is some good news. Dam levels are set to receive their best inflows in about 3 years. If initial predictions are correct for Warragamba Dam, they could surpass 55% capacity, up from 43% just before this weather event occurred. And if initial government predictions are correct, they could exceed 70. They could get up as high as 70% capacity. So certainly some very good news for the dam levels right across the state, Mark.
Yeah, that would be very welcome. Tom Saker, thank you. And the city centre has certainly taken a hammering today with the weather system likened to a Category 1 cyclone as winds of more than 110 kilometres an hour were recorded along the harbour. Let's go to Samantha Brett at Circular Quay. Sam, what's it like there tonight?
Well, Mark, we've really seen these gale force easterly winds ripping up the harbour, so I can tell you it is very, very uncomfortable here this evening. We've seen wind gusts, as you mentioned, of over 110 kilometres an hour, and the rain here is really coming in sideways. It's caused all sorts of problems, not only in the city, but out in our suburbs as well. So in Balmoral on Sydney's lower North Shore, we saw a boat actually wash ashore. We understand that boat is worth more than $1 million. This rain event has been going on for quite some time now. We can expect it to continue for several more hours. So, Mark, the advice is if you can avoid coming into the city, then stay at home tonight, Mark. Yeah,
very good advice, Sam. Thank you. Now, our drought-stricken and fire-affected farmers have long been praying for rain, hundreds of millimetres falling on dusty ground across the northern and southern parts of our state. The deluge mostly very welcome, but also creating a new danger for some.
The North Coast battered. 500 millimetres has hit the ground in 4 days. The sheer volume of water leading to flash floods. Crews forced to perform 40 flood rescues across the state.
There has been a number that have driven into floodwaters and we have had to rescue them.
That system intensified, hitting the mid-North Coast and spreading south.
It's uncommon to see rainfall rates as high as we're seeing.
This afternoon, a teenage boy was pulled to safety near Dungog after he fell off a canoe in floodwaters.
So the majority have been people being caught between 2 rivers or creeks that have gone up unexpectedly.
Homes inundated with water at Ourimbah on the Central Coast.
Concerned about tonight, in the dark, if it keeps rising.
Heavy falls, relief for some farmers. One near Scone rejoiced in a dam. The kids and even the dog joined in. Drought-ravaged land, drenched. Roos jumping in the wet through Coonamble, a town in the central Western Plains. Dust, now muddy waters.
We've had nearly 100% of the state in drought conditions over the course of the last 12 months. So no matter where it falls at the moment, it's going to be welcome relief.
Rain hit paddocks in Gloucester and Tamworth too.
God, these guys got up in time. I don't know where the goats and the donkeys are.
The Illawarra soaked more than 100 millimetres and it's still falling.
The rain isn't just heavy, it actually hurts as it comes in sideways. But it's when you look at the surf that you can tell the strength and severity of this system battering the coast. Wave heights of over 5 metres recorded here in Wollongong Harbour.
In Ulladulla, a yacht beached. And just further south, after raging for 74 days, the Currowan fire is out.
It is fantastic. There's no doubt there's smiling faces everywhere right now.
And Miley Hogan joins me now from Bateman's Bay. Miley, locals there on the south coast are still waiting for the big downpour.
Yeah, Mark, well, it has been raining here for a few days. They've had enough to help extinguish that Currowan fire, but the falls that are hitting north are due to arrive on the south coast tonight and intensify early tomorrow morning. Now, that does bring a new threat to the south coast, this fire-affected community. The landscape here has been damaged. There's hardly any vegetation, and that does make this area vulnerable to landslides and flooding when those big falls arrive. Now, just as this community has started to recover from one natural disaster, they are tonight being told to prepare for a new weather event. Mark.
Miley Hogan at Bateman's Bay, thank you. Let's bring in our meteorologist now, David Brown. Brownie, the heavy rain set to continue.
In the short term, Fergo, and good evening to you, yes, but we can expect some moderation overnight. But in the meantime, we still have this active trough with embedded mesoscale lows, which dominates the eastern seaboard. As you saw in our reports earlier, easterly winds have exceeded 110 kilometres per hour on parts of our coast. And of course, those onshore winds have been driving this. Monster waves, of course, have been pounding our beaches. A wave rider buoy, which is about 10 k's off Sydney Heads, recorded waves up to 14 metres. Can you believe it? That happened earlier today. That's about the size of a 4-storey building. As we go to the radar, you can still see we've got extensive rain, scattered storms across the interior, but the heaviest rain now is gradually shifting towards the south. In fact, as we go to our future radar, you'll notice that. The heavy rain pushing all the way down towards those fire zones, and they're in for a real drenching overnight, but that heavy rain will eventually clear offshore during the early part of tomorrow afternoon.